Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for tuning in to Big Little Small Talk. My name is Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I'm with a very special guest today. She's an illustrator and a writer and her name is Lucia Masciullo. Did I get that right, Lucia?
Perfectly. It sounds fabulous.
It sounds fabulous when you say it with an Italian accent. Now, we're here at the Wright Gallery at the Lighthouse, Emma McTaggart's fabulous place here in the corner of Hume Street, and you've got an exhibition, but you're doing lots of other things too. So tell me what you did last night. What happened last night?
Last night there was an event organized by Booklinks, and it's called Romancing the Stars. And it's like speed dating between authors and illustrators, local, and teacher librarians or people who are interested in children's literature, people who would like to be an author or an illustrator. So it has been a great evening, and I've met several other authors and illustrators, and I come here quite regularly visiting schools. So I've met some of the teacher librarians I've met in the past, but I've met some more. So I hope they will invite me back in the future, and I'm always happy to come back to Toowoomba.
So Lucia, what was it's to try and get more people connected, like writers and illustrators. Is that how it is?
Not necessarily. It's more to connect them with people who are interested in literature in Toowoomba in this case. Booklinks organize them also in Brisbane and occasionally even on the Gold Coast where I live. It's more, to connect the creators with the local community more. Authors and illustrators, they do have their own events some occasionally. But I have to confess, we usually, illustrator and author, they don't work together. So
we're here, and also you have an exhibition which you're showing this afternoon and tonight, and it's how you've illustrated this fabulous book called Eat My Dust, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on because it's the most incredible story of two women driving great distances, and I want to talk about the process. But I'll just ask you now, how do you, as an illustrator, get linked up with the writer? How does that process happen?
So basically the author applied the story to a publisher, and they usually select the publisher who publish stories aligned with their own style. And the publisher, they select the stories that they think they're going to work. Even because it's quite a big expense for them, so they have to be very selective in the choice. And after they choose the story they like to publish, they try to match the illustrator that can, with their art, match the story. And so they contact the illustrator that they think. In this case, the author Nerida McMullen, beautiful story, contacted the publisher Walker Books Australia. And then they contacted me and asked me if I wanted to illustrate the story. They sent me the story, the manuscript, and I was amazed of their story. I never heard about these two girls. And the fact that it's a real story was really a plus for me. And I immediately said, yes, I really want to do it. And that's how we,
the collaboration. So would you, for you to make money or to survive, I guess, do you then try and pitch your work to different publishers all the time, do you, so that they know about you and know about your style? Or how does it work?
Initially, that's what's happening. So when I moved from Italy in 2007, I sent my portfolio, my best pictures, to Australian publishers. And I started doing this in Italy before moving in Australia, but I didn't receive any answer. So the first thing I noticed in Australia is the publishers answered my email and said to me, thank you, you are now in our database. If we need a collaboration with your style, we will contact you. And for me, it was a kind way to say goodbye. But instead, after a month, I received my first offer. And they asked me, would you like to illustrate this picture book. And I was, this is what I wanted to do for years. And I was jumping up and down in the house and said, yes, of course, with my little English, because when I moved to Australia, I didn't know much about, I studied German at school, so I wasn't able to speak English for a couple of years.
So let's talk about that big move in 2007. So you're born and bred in Livorno, is that correct? And you studied biology.
Yes.
So how do we end up in Australia with very little English illustrating children's books?
Life, right? Well, first of all, probably it wasn't a good choice to choose German as a second language, moving to Australia. I love science, so I loved studying animals and plants in Italy. I was at the University of Pisa, that is 20 kilometers from Livorno, my town. The problem was when I started working as a biologist, all the works that I found were quite repetitive and usually in a lab, and I didn't like much my choices. So I tried to, wanted to do something in my life that was worth it for me. So I gave my passion of drawing and painting a possibility. I attended a course in Florence, and my teacher were other illustrators, and they encouraged me to pursue this as a proper career. So I practiced a lot on my own, and of course, being an illustrator is not an easy travel, because first of all, for many years, you don't earn money. So I was lucky that my partner was able to pay all the rent and the bills. And secondly, you have to find the courage to expose your art and to accept a feedback that can be positive, but also negative. And receiving a negative feedback on something that you really love, it's quite tough. So some days I was super happy with my illustrations. The next day I was mortified. I thought, well, I will never be able to do it. And so it was an up and down path for many, many years.
So tell me the path. Did you come to Australia because of love or because of travel, or neither?
Probably because of love, because my partner is a biologist as well. And he won a grant for staying and studying at the University of Queensland for 1 year. And that was 2006. So since then, things have changed. We fall in love with the lifestyle of Australia. And even with my little English, I really fall in love with the kind of life and possibilities that there are here in Australia. His professor liked his job, and so for several years he renewed his
visa.
His visa, thank you. And so we have been on a temporary visa for approximately the first 5-6 years. So we were always with one step in Australia, one step in Italy, until finally we applied for a permanent visa based on my job, and with the help of other illustrators and publishers, I get this visa. It was a special visa. It's called Distinguished Talent Visa. And it's for artists or sportsmen or academic people who wants to move to Australia. And so I was very lucky, and the people helped me. They were so generously giving their time for me. And when I received the email from the immigration, I was like winning a lottery for me. So since then, we settled up in Australia, and now Australia is my home now, yes.
Yeah, so interesting. So you came here because of your husband, but end up getting one of those special visas that, and you know, and now you're here. So you live on the Gold Coast?
Yes,
yeah.
I do.
And your English obviously has improved.
Oh, thank you.
Well, you speak perfect English. Tell me about being an environmental guide and a ski surveyor. Yeah, in Italy.
Yes, when I was in my Italian life, I have to say, one of the best jobs that I found. I love being outside, not inside the lab, as you can have guessed. was traveling with schools in the archipelagos of Tuscany. Tuscany has lovely little islands. Elba is the biggest one, but there are many little ones. There are 5, and so my job was to explain to the kids how the nature is in this little island, what are the peculiarity of animals and plants, and so it was. I was in love with this job, but unfortunately, the only problem was that it was very limited, because in Italy, time is good in springtime for this kind of activities, but summer is too hot, and winter and autumn are cold and very rainy days. So unfortunately, it was only for a few months each year, and it wasn't sustainable.
And the calling all the time of doing art. So at that time, were you sketching, the flora and the fauna of what you were seeing as well, or not so much?
I always have done this as a passion. So I always have a little notepad with me, and sometimes when I have time, I do it. But my life was very busy, because I have several, in these months when you have to work and you can work, you have to do as much as you can. And same things happen with my career as a ski surveyor.
What does a ski surveyor mean?
It's a weird word, isn't it? So in Italy, there is a company called Navionics that is producing maps for cars mainly. And the owner had this idea of mapping also ski resorts in Europe. And my job was to skiing in these beautiful resorts in Switzerland, France, Italy, even Sweden and Finland with a GPS. And so I could track skiing the path, and stopping from time to time to drink a coffee or beautiful local specialties, and track them on the GPS.
Ah, that's amazing. That just seems like something out of another world for us living here in Queensland, where we don't go skiing very often, and most of the time, except for today, it's usually pretty warm. Are your parents still alive in Italy?
Yes, they are.
Tell me about the have you taken citizenship here in Australia?
Yes.
Yeah, I always am fascinated by people who take citizenship in another country, and how does that feel? Does it feel a little bit disloyal, or does it just feel like we're moving on to this great new thing? Or is it heart-wrenching, I suppose?
Well, first of all, I'm lucky because I'm allowed to have both Italian and Australian citizenship. So I am both Italian and Australian at the moment. And the reason we decided to have the citizenship was quite practical, because we got the citizenship a month before I got my daughter. And because she was going to have both citizenship, we decided, it was me and my partner, we decided to have both citizenship as well. I've been past several years since I moved to Australia. And as I said, I consider Australia the place where I want to live now, my country. So I don't think it's disloyal. I'm very happy to go back in Italy and visit my family and my friends. And culturally, probably I'm more close to them than the Australian culture that I'm just starting to learn and to understand and appreciate. Thank you. But again,
you didn't feel torn, or when you were in that citizenship ceremony and singing their national anthem, or you just felt like you were this is just the next part of your life?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a new chapter of my life, and I felt it was time to be full on into the Australian citizenship. So no, it was a beautiful day, and we had another couple of friends from Turkey that the same day they got their citizenship as well. And no, it was a great ceremony, and we really love living here. Australia.
I'll just remind the listeners that they're on 102.7 FM, and we're on Big Little Small Talk. You're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan. We're talking to Lucia Masciullo. Oh, we're bogans here in Australia, aren't we? But she's an illustrator and a writer, and she's got an exhibition at the Lighthouse Gallery. She has illustrated a beautiful book called Eat My Dust, and we're going to talk about that incredible story in a minute. But my last question about your family in Italy. Now, you won an award not that long ago for a book that you illustrated called Come Down Cat. And what did your dad say when, tell me about winning that award?
So Come Down Cat has been probably the book that won more awards so far. The author is Sonia Harnett. It's a beautiful author. Again, it was on this story when I read the story, said I really want to do the picture for this book. And it was shortlisted for the CBCA award that year.
What's the CB?
It's a Children's Book Council of Australia. So it's probably the most prestigious award in Australia for children's book. And the other one was shortlisted also for the Prime Minister Award. And so I've been invited together with the publisher and the author in Canberra. And the Prime Minister at the time was Julia Gillard, gave me, I didn't want the award, but being shortlisted and surrounded by so many talented authors and illustrators was just a privilege for me, being an Italian coming here in Canberra. And during the ceremony, I had a picture of Miss Gillard giving to me, how do you call it?
The award or the placard.
Award placard, yeah. Thank you. And I sent this picture to my dad in Italy. And every time that Miss Gillard was on TV in the Italian news, he used to comment, "Oh, look, this is my daughter's friend."
I love that story, the pride of a parent. You know?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. All of your illustrations, do you always do watercolors?
No, not all the time. I usually, publisher uses the choice, but usually the watercolors are for a picture book. Sometimes I have also black and white illustrations for the chapter book, depending on the budget that the publisher is allowing to the book itself. And I love to change also medium, because this, being an illustrator, is my best, I think is the best job in the world. And I want to keep it as fresh as I can. So I want to keep the emotions that I had when I started. And if you do repeat the same technique over and over, tend to be a little bit more like everyday job. So I try to test myself, changing a little bit the style, changing medium. And every time I challenge myself to do something differently. And later on, we can talk about Eat My Dust. I challenge myself a lot in this one.
We're waiting in suspense to talk about Eat My Dust, and it is such an incredible story. But on Big Little Small Talk, we have interviewed Rory H. Mather, who I think you may have met last night. He's a children's book author as well. And he was telling me, which I didn't know, that there's a certain size of, and it's 16 pages, is that right? There's because of the way that they're published, and so it's either 16 or 32 pages, or which was fascinating. Is that, do they sort of say to you, this is how many illustrations we want, or how does it work?
Yes, so they send me the manuscript, so the plain words, and usually you are right. So there are 32 pages. It means 16 pages banded together. And that's the standard. But said that, they are always happy if, in this case, adding a couple of more pages, because sometimes when I do the sketches, I really have so many ideas that cannot fit into 32 pages. And so occasionally they add a couple of more, but they always have to be in group of 4. Because of how you band the book.
Right, so 4 of the same theme, is it, or?
I mean, because each page has 1, 2, and on the other side 3 and 4 sides for face. I mean, so it means that every time you have to add in the number of 4, so they can be 16 or 32, so 36 is the next.
Yeah, and you were telling me before, Lucia, that you do lots and lots of sketches and drawings and paintings, and if it's not quite right and it doesn't work for you straight away, you just move on to another one. Is that right? You have a certain time limit for yourself to do
That's
something?
right. So there is a deadline that is written on the contract, and I try to meet the deadlines because publishers are happier, and because I also have other projects in lines, I try to be
but for each drawing, like you do a drawing, and if you're not happy with that, you just move on to another one, or a painting.
It depends on the project and the deadlines. You're right. I usually try to do only one final illustration for the book. It didn't happen with Eat My Dust because one of the challenge that I was talking about was to have a lot of details done with ink and all the time that I could, but to paint with the watercolor very quickly. So I allowed myself only 15 minutes for each page. And if the page didn't come out as I had in mind, I just do another one instead of trying to retouch it and adjust it. Because watercolor is one of these medium that is quite quick, and it comes or it doesn't. So there is no way to fix it. So it's better, I think, to redo another page from scratch. And that's why in the exhibition there are several pages that have multiple way that I've done and sorry that I hope you do understand what I was talking about.
Yes, yeah, definitely. You said before that you read manuscripts and you say, I really want to do that. Have you ever said, no, I can't do this one?
It happened only once, and I still regret it because at that time I didn't have much time. I have other deadlines, so I didn't thought much about the project itself. I had beautiful project I was working on the moment, and it didn't sparkle my imagination much at the time. And I said, I'm sorry, probably there are other illustrators who can illustrate better than me the same story. And in fact, it became a beautiful book. It didn't resonate with me personally. But said that, unfortunately, this publisher didn't offer me anymore because I said no once. And
so do you find when you're reading the manuscript that the images are coming into your mind as you're reading it? How does it work?
Yes, I'm a visual person, definitely. So when I read a story, first of all, I had like a feeling. I feel that it's a story that really wants to come out in a book. And that's my first impression. And yes, the second impression, if it's a good story, I start imagining moments of the story. It's in a sort of comic book or movie kind of style. And then my job is to try to pick these ideas that I have initially and place them in the paper as soon as I can before they don't go away. But definitely I have this urge to draw and to sketch them.
Does the writer ever see the illustrations and say, no, that's not what I want? Does it work like that, or do they not have the say? Is it the publisher who decides whether it's right or wrong for that project?
It's always a collaboration. So when I do a sketch or an idea, I always are in contact with the publisher. And it depending on their relationship with the author, sometimes they send all the material I send to them to the author and they comment as well. But sometimes the author only sees the final work and they are surprised of all the project when it's finished. But the important thing is in Australia, because I've also worked with publishers in UK, for example, they work differently. But the good thing is in Australia is that you just receive one feedback, one voice. And you don't know if the comment is from the publisher or the author. But the publishers is always in between me and the author. So they probably do the decision of if they have two different ideas for the same page, probably they have a good feeling of a good sense of what could work better to convey the message of the story.
I just find it fascinating because I think if I was writing it in my mind as I'm writing it, I would see it in a certain way, and I would have thought that, you know, I can't imagine being the author and then opening up the book and going, oh God, this is not anything like I wanted. Or do they just have to trust the process, I suppose?
That's right. The author that approaches the publisher, they trust their knowledge. And I work with main publishers, so with Penguin, HarperCollins, Walker Books, Hardy Grant. So they always, Little Hair as well. So they always have a sense of what's the good options for selling books. And we have the same goal. So it never happens that the author wasn't happy. So we usually exchange emails at the end of the project, and they are usually happy about my work, or at least that's what they wrote to me.
Look, I don't. This is probably, you know, more a question about my narcissism, but how do you go, like when, say, the book is being launched or winning awards, and it's they're always saying this is the book by someone or other? Do they always mention you as the illustrator, and do you sort of get a little bit peeved sometimes?
Unfortunately, I have to say yes. Illustrators, they arrive always seconds. So the author is the ideas come from them mainly. So they are the one that they mention first. But since this is my personal battle, when I visit schools or read books to kids at events, I always read both author and illustrators on the cover before reading inside. So I think it's important to mention that the illustrators have the same amount of percentage of work inside a picture book.
I think that's such a great thing for you to have told me, because I don't think until this moment interviewing you that I've probably ever looked at it in quite the same way. So I've been educated, exactly, yes. I'll just remind the listeners that we're in Big Little Small Talk. My name's Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we are interviewing illustrator and writer Lucia Masciullo. I'll get it right before the end, yes. So just before we talk about it, have you written books as well, Lucia? Have I got that correct?
No, I'm not a writer.
Oh, well, you should have pulled me up earlier.
No, it's okay. I would like to. It's like a wish probably for you to write. I've never been good in writing, not even in Italian when I was at school. And I really love drawing and illustrating so much that probably my first book, because I'm working on my own project when I have a little bit of spare time, probably is going to be a picture with no words or a very limited amount of words, because I'm more confident in my picture than my words. But yes, that's my next step. My next step is we're going to be doing my own project.
Up ahead. Now, this fabulous story of Eat My Dust is about two women, Jean Robertson and Kathleen Howell, who helped map Australia in 1928. And I thought it was interesting before when you were talking about the ski surveying, the parallels between that and what this book is about. So tell me about the story and the process and how this book came to be here in your hands.
The story is just amazing, because it's an adventurous story. It's about these two girls that almost 100 years ago, they raced a car that it was an Italian brand car.
It was, I know, it's a Lancia Lambda.
That's right. Yeah. And they raced from Perth to Adelaide against time, and they could, of course, break the records at the time because they were smart and strong. But they raced also against stereotypes at the time, because it was
stereotypes. Yes,
because at that time a lot of men were happy to have women inside the house, and probably having women racing and driving wasn't expected for them. So they were changing what was happening, and it was really not in their mind. So in the book, you can see a couple of moments when they receive nasty comments from men. But they keep endured and have this big adventure, considering that at that time there were no petrol station and not even roads sometimes. So they were in the middle of, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, Nullarbor Plain.
Nullarbor, yeah.
Oh, Nullarbor. Yep. And they had no roads, so have to follow the telegraph poles in the middle of the night. And so they get lost, of course, in the book, but they came back and found this little stick in the middle of the desert that was the telegraph pole. So they really had a big adventure and they endure everything. And they reminds me actually of my grandmother, of my nonna. Nonna Dina is her name. Because first of all, she had pretty much the same age of the two girls. And in fact, I have, at the end of the book, there is a picture of the two women, and they are dressed up like my nonna in the picture that I have in Italy. And she was also trying to change stereotype in her own way. She came from a poor family of farmers in the north of Italy, and instead of driving, she was climbing the Alps with ropes, dressing up with short pants. And the thing was considered quite weird at the time. And she was considered a bit weird in her village. And that's why I dedicated the book to her. So at the end of the book, you can see to my unconventional nonna and the other inspirational girls of the past.
Beautiful. I mean, you've got the adventure spirit, I think, running through your family, lots of generations. I tell you what I thought was really interesting. I read that Jean gained a motor maintenance qualification at Alice Anderson's female-run motor garage after finishing school. Did you do your own research into the story as well?
More than the research on her biography, I was researching more into a lot of visual details. For example, I've never been in a lot of the places that are mentioned in the book. And I did this book in the second year of COVID, so I wasn't allowed to travel much. So I traveled through Google and libraries and books, but not more than 5 kilometers around the Gold Coast, I'm afraid. And so, for example, I had to study, there are pictures with coins or with, of course, the cars. There are, at that time, I contacted the Lancia Club of Queensland, and I found out that there was a couple living not far from the Gold Coast, and they had a Lancia Lambda. But I wasn't allowed to travel that far, unfortunately. So they sent me some picture and I used them as a reference for the book. And so on. For the dress up in 1928, they were quite different. Even little details, because I think the little details are the ones that give you the feeling of historical fiction. So there are the lamps or the mechanical objects, the gloves that they were wearing, and the compass, is it called, right? The compass, and compasses was pretty much what we use today, didn't change much. But all these details, I have to study them and research them carefully, because I'm also a scientist. I want to be precise with the details. For example, in the last page, when do they arrive in Adelaide, there is a picture of the mayor. And initially in my sketch was just a man. But then I researched what was he looking like. So I researched what was the mayor of Adelaide in 1928, and I could find a picture on black and white of him. So I depicted exactly what he was at the time. So probably are the details that nobody knows about and nobody will notice, but for me are important. So I am a little bit of a visual researcher, I have to say.
Wonderful. And all under the restrictions of COVID. There was someone else, not someone else, there was a companion in the car with the two women. Who was that?
He's there.
Or what was that?
What was that? It was their dog, their beautiful dog, Bunny. And he was, I imagine, like a little helper for them. So they were the two girls among this vast Australian landscape. And I thought they needed a little helper. And so it's always in every picture he was trying to be together with them. So I try to depict the bond between the two girls. So their dog is basically the little helper that comes out to help or to hang some tools when they are changing the tire, for example. And is also the expression of the dog is also trying to help you visualizing the emotions of the girl. So in one of the first picture, for example, they receive a bad comment from an official racer, official, yes, of the race. And the two girls are watching him with a very disappointed look, and so Barney as well. So he's always underlying their emotions and try to help them in their trip.
Good luck, the police cheer and wave. You're going to need it. I bet you're back by dinner time, sniggers the official. So was Barney really part of the story?
That's right, yes.
And what type of dog was Barney?
Oh, that's I wasn't sure, so that's what I tried to depict was from the picture that I received. So at the end of the book, in one of the two pictures, there is a picture of Barney as well, but it's not clear, and I couldn't find exactly what race it was, the dog. But I tried to depict the same kind of medium size.
One black eye, one white eye.
That's right.
Yes. Oh, how beautiful. That's lovely. I read somewhere where the women, with the sand, they took these two great big strips of coconut mat and they put it underneath the tires. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Actually, in the picture of the car, you can see they were in the front of the car. And they are basically two sort of carpets, and when they get stuck in the sand, they have two of them, one for each tire, and they have to place in the sand just in front of the car and try to push on the back and get unstuck. And there are pictures that I found where they had to use it. Unfortunately, they were quite big and not so nice to depict on the picture, so I asked permission to the publisher to move these two big things on the back of the car. And so in the picture, they are the spare tire on the front and the coir matting, I think they're called, on the back, because they are huge and otherwise you couldn't see properly the face of the two girls driving the car.
That's the liberty of illustration, I suppose, isn't it gorgeous? So what happened to the two women after this big race? Because I understand that there was three big races, wasn't there? There was one in 1927 where they went from Melbourne to Darwin, and then one in 1928, which is this one I think that you're talking about, the Melbourne to Perth. Is that right? And then 1938 they represented Australia in the Monte Carlo rally. So what happened to them afterwards?
Well, after all these races and this beautiful trip they did, they got married. And
not to each other?
No, they got married with separate ways. And they, one of them, I don't remember which one of the two at the moment, they got son and daughter, and they have still relatives that they also try to contact before the publication of the book. The other one probably didn't have any son or at all, so they just ended up being married. So sometimes wedding, it's the end of their career as driver. But I hope they became something else.
Yes, it's an incredible story to have resurrected. So the author of this book, how did she hear about the story? Do you know the background there?
I'm not sure. Nerida? No, I'm sorry, I don't know. But Nerida, she loves doing historical picture books. So she is great to pick these beautiful stories that are not known to the main majority of Australian, and to create with little details a story, because it's not just a biography. You have also to tell a story that is appealing to children. So through their engagement with the story, you can also talk about the problem at the time or about another aspect. And yeah, I think this was her second book.
Eat My Dust. It's a fantastic story. Is your grandmother still alive?
No, unfortunately not. She passed away when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a story about my grandma. It doesn't finish here. So in the print page, see, this is the first page that you have in the book, where the name of the author, illustrator, and the title is. There is a picture of a camera. And I imagine this camera, it's an old Kodak camera that the girls were using. I'm not sure if this is exactly what they were using, because the girls did a lot of pictures of their trip and you only see the picture. So I imagine I did my research again, and I found out that this was one of the few that were available at the time. And it looks very nice even on the picture. So I decided to have it in my book. And the year after I finished the book, after COVID, the COVID time, I went to Italy to visit my parents. And they were moving into my grandmother's house in a countryside of Tuscany. And I found out they had the same camera in their garage. And I was quite puzzled. I said, wow, Mom, this is exactly the same camera that is in the book. How is it possible? I never seen it. And she answered to me, well, because this is not my camera. This was your grandma.
Chilling moment?
Yes, chilling moment. And so I asked my mom permission to bring the camera with me. And so now it will be, exposed in the middle of the exhibition, together with other little objects that create the atmosphere of the time.
Oh, Lucia, I love that. It's sitting here right next to the book in a beautiful leather-bound case. So tell me about the exhibition. How long is it running for?
It will be open until the end of the month, until the 27th of June. And on
this afternoon, you're having a launch.
I'm having an opening, in the afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m.
And you're telling the story of the race and of the women and things, and your process of doing the illustrations?
Well, it will be more welcoming to the attendant, and we are going to dress up in the style of 1920s. So I will have something that resemble a little bit the girls in the book. I have a pink scarf as they have. I unfortunately couldn't find any leather helmet. But yeah, all the rest, I have gloves and funny pants and
what fun! Oh, that's great. Do you have? I don't suppose you've got the Lancia Lambda.
I asked this couple that I found if they could come. They unfortunately couldn't today, but there are people coming from Brisbane with a 1928 car, a Chevrolet, I think it's come. And so I'm really looking forward to have lots of pictures dressed up. And they are also having, this is what Emma McTaggart told me, they have a beautiful dressing up and camera. So it will be a very great moment to take pictures of a car of the time.
Oh, that sounds like lots of fun. That's wonderful. So it's here at the Lighthouse Gallery, which is on the corner of Hume and Margaret Street. And it's here, the illustrations and the other accompanying things, the cameras and all the other things that you've got, will be here until the 27th of June. Have I got that right?
That's right,
yes. Yeah, beautiful. I'd recommend coming down and having a look because it is absolutely stunning. I'll just remind the listeners that they're on 102.7 FM and we're on Big Little Small Talk. You're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we are interviewing illustrator and writer Lucia Masciullo. Okay, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I love that little twist there with that story about the camera. But as listeners will know, I sometimes have a few curly questions at the end of the interviews. I think this one's a beautiful one for you, Lucia. And I wrote it even before I had met you, but I think with your whimsy and your, dreaming and your characters, that I get the sense that you love too, and you love to draw. If you were in a circus, which character would you be?
Yes, I love the circus theme and the quirky characters that are there. I probably is gonna be an acrobat. Yes, I love the dress that they have, the fancy dress and the tutu. And I love how they can fly from one rope to the next. Not that I can, but yeah, maybe in another life I could try to emulate them and do the same. Yeah, definitely an acrobat. Yes, someone flying.
Okay, we've got two things on our bucket list for this year. One is to become a writer, and the other one is to become an acrobat. Okay, so I'll come back in 12 months' time and see how you've gone.
No pressure.
What is the one thing, you can say it in Italian or in English, that you shouldn't say at a wedding, Lucia?
The wedding, of course. I think in Italian will be 100 di questi giorni, and it's something you say more at birthdays and instead of wedding. It means a wish to have 100 of these days.
Oh, so you shouldn't say that at a wedding?
Probably 100 weddings would be too many for a single person.
Fair enough. I thought you were going to say something like that policeman there. You'll be home by dinner time, in a disparaging way. What about the worst present you have ever received?
Oh, bad presents. Oh, I'm very bad in doing presents, but I'm quite lucky in having presents. But yeah, I remember I was trying to do a lot of love. I love doing pictures as well. And I was a teenager and my father gave me this camera and I thought, oh, wow, that's it. But unfortunately, it ended up being one of these dodgy cameras, all plasticky and not really the good thing. So I was hoping for a moment that it was the one that I could use for the rest of my life and became a famous photographer. But unfortunately, I used it only for a limited time. And I said, look, Dad, I'm sorry, but this is not exactly what I was expecting. But thank you so much. You have been very nice with me, but I will buy my own next. Yes.
So he's made up for it by calling Julia Gillard my daughter's friend for the rest of his life. So he's done fairly well.
I to say sometimes dads, they do their best, but not necessarily are what you are expecting.
Exactly.
Right?
Have you gone on to become a famous photographer?
Not yet.
Add that
Let's
to the list.
Talk in 12 months and we'll see.
That's right. We'll see how we go. All right. What about if you could do anything illegal and not get caught? What would it be?
Ooh, anything illegal. I have a very big list, I have to say to this. One of the things that happens to me, I did only in Corsica Island in France once. And it's a bit naughty, I know, but it's going to the beach naked.
Oh, Italians, you love your sun though. You just can't get the bikini small enough, can you? So naked is the next best thing.
Yeah, just to do something that is, forbidden, right? And actually, my experience was very short because I was really uncomfortable in being completely naked. But still, I challenged myself to do it for a few minutes. And the bad thing is that, unfortunately, that is still my father's story. He always taught me to do the right thing. And I can do anything illegal, for real. When I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I really wanted some gum. And at the supermarket, we used to do together the shopping on Saturdays. And he said, no, this is not the time. And so, of course, I wasn't happy of his answer. So I just grabbed the gum and I had a big jumper on me, like a poncho kind of style. They were the 80s. So it was the time where you have this nice and woolly jumper.
Perfect for thieving by the sounds of it.
You know what I got. Yeah, so I was just going outside, and at a certain point he asked me to help him with the bag, but in my hand I have the gum. So I said, I didn't say anything, I just stared at him. And he said, why? What are you hiding? Do you have something? I said, no. But my face is like an open book with semi-silence, so I cannot lie. And so he discovered I have the gum, and then we have to came back in the shop, and in front of everybody was telling, oh, this is my daughter, I'm so sorry what she has done. And this is from a family that is a Catholic family, so I raised with the principle of God and the 10 rules that you have to follow. So in front of everybody, I was crying so much that I didn't try to do anything wrong since.
You've never stolen so much as a mushroom at the supermarket?
Not even the mushrooms, no. But occasionally I did try one grape before buying them.
Well, she's naughty. She's very naughty.
Very naughty.
Now, I don't know whether you would be very invested in the royals, but do you have a favourite royal?
Unfortunately, royal families are not really close to Italian culture, so we had royals for only a very short time. Well, first of all, Italy was born in 1860, and at the end of the Second World War, we had no more king because they really misbehaved. And so it really in the culture is not close to mine. But probably I would pick a Roman emperor, because emperor probably is even more than king at the time, like Julius Caesar, I think you call it in English. He basically was the ruler of the world at that time. So you have, all this power, but it's not just this. He was also able to do the good decisions. Not that I can actually, but it would be nice to think of being a conqueror, and also he was able to make everything working together, even different population with different background. So he was able to delegate the locals their own government. So in a way, he was a good ruler, I guess.
I don't think I've ever had a Julius Caesar before, but that's a first, and it's perfect too. Final question for you, Lucia. What's the song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
Oh, I have to confess, I love the ABBA.
A particular ABBA song?
Yes. Well, Mamma Mia is one of my favorite, but also I don't remember the title, but
how does it go?
You know.
I can't think of the name of it either.
And because I was listening these songs when I was in Italy, and I wasn't able to speak English, so all the songs that I was able to sing were in a wobbling kind of language, so that's why I don't remember the words.
Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but honestly, it has been such a joy hearing your story, and Italy's loss and our gain to have you here. It's just been wonderful to hear about your exhibition. I encourage the listeners to try and come down and see the exhibition. So, Lucia Masciullo, I have one last go at it. Thank you for being my guest on Big Little Small Talk.
Thank you so much for the interview. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.